What's up, guys? It's your boy Kittens coming back to you guys with exciting news. I made it into Mythic and I forgot to record the final gameplays. I thought I did, but in classic Nelson style, I just forgot to end life. So I wanted to share the handful of decks that got me into Mythic, the last few decks that I was playing in Diamond, that I was upgrading and such. And I figure I'll start with the two decks that I haven't shared on any of the platforms yet. And this is the deck that got me into Mythic, that got me those final 3 wins that I forgot to record. And I really, Drake is one of the first decks that I actually built. Ironically, this is the deck that I got like, not Arena, the freaking, the other app, the one where the one that's forever ago, like the, baby stuff, whatever. And freaking, this was the deck that I wanted to build, coming into playing Magic on the computer. And I'm really excited that we got Brainstorm and Faithless Looting to really have the deck still be good, still be, doable inside of Historic, where a bunch of the decks are winning on turn 3 or 4 or so. And it's a pretty sweet deck. I've been definitely having a lot of fun with it. And right now, I think this deck might be, of the couple decks that I'm going to show, this might be the one that has the best situated kind of place in the format, or at least, where people are right now with everything. Probable Alliance is a weird card I think that other people might not use. I use it to kind of get around White Flyers, because White Flyers I think is the strongest deck in the format right now, and my deck and a bunch of my decks just have huge difficulty competing with White Flyers because they just put huge amount of power on the board as well as life gain. But Improbable Alliance allows you to have those little blockers, and then eventually you can swing in with a big crackling Drake and hopefully do some damage and such. I play one Niv Mizzet. I feel like a lot of people might not play Niv Mizzet, but there's a lot of decks where you put a Niv Mizzet on board and then you just proceed to win the game. There's also a lot of times where you're literally, winning off of Sprite Dragon and you just have Niv in hand and there's literally no reason to cast the Niv. You just want to sit there, drawing extra cards with your 1-drops and 2-drops and burn your opponent's stuff down. To just get in there with your Sprite Dragon. Sometimes you even just discard Niv because it's just not, usable in that game. But I still think it's worth playing just that one of, because every once in a while it's just so flavor. It's just how it is. So Fabled Passage, Temple, Sulfur, fun stuff. Do what you want. But this is my build. It's been doing really well. So, have fun with that stuff. Otherwise, one of the other decks that I've really been having fun with and I wanted to share was my Simic Turns. Simic Turns is kind of ridiculous, but the problem with Simic Turns is that you're most of the time going to be starting to take turns right on like turn 4 if you're lucky, if you end up getting Time Warp right off the start, or turn 5. And a lot of times you're literally staring down, a handful of creatures with like, 8 life, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to start taking turns now, but there's not much removal in my side of the deck. You can definitely move some stuff around and put in River's Rebukes and things like that, but I've already tried that and it just doesn't quite fit the consistency. I've ended up settling on using 2 Questing Beasts and Elder Gargaroth to really be able to put in extra damage immediately, because a lot of times before, the winning combination was like, getting into an early Krasis at like 2, and then the turn after that, playing into an Epiphany to get some extra flyers, and then hitting your opponent down. And on average, the deck takes somewhere around like 4 or 5 extra turns. I've even had random games where it's just ridiculous. Like, it's a lot of fun to play. Like, I know it's kind of rude, it's non-interactive, but like taking 7 turns in a row just feels so good. So it's just one of those things. I hope you guys enjoy the deck, and maybe I'll see some mirror matches of this one. I've seen a couple of the other turns decks that are pretty sweet, like the one that has the red-white dragon is like the vigilance guy that digs for a spell. That one's really nice. I think they use like Goldspan Dragon as well. I think that one's really fun. This one is a little bit faster, and I have had, I think, 2 or 3 mirror matches, and I have lost a couple of those. I think the deck, it favors mine just because. But I haven't done a mirror match since I've changed the stuff around to be more creature heavy and low to the ground, hoping to hit that Questing Beast on turn 3 because it's just awesome. So that is the extra turns deck. It works pretty well, but right now in the format, just not so much. I mean, you end up against an aggro deck or the white-black Extort deck that uses a handful of flyers. You'll end up in a rough situation. They'll have like a flyer. You'll want to Epiphany, but then you can't attack because they're just going to block your flyers down, and it's just a rough time. One of the other decks that I've been playing for a significant period of time, but recently was able to do some pretty fun upgrades and stuff with the, the Abundant Harvest being a nice card to add for lands in the beginning, or once you hit that like nice sweet spot of like 4 lands, you just start adding, hopefully into Teferis or whatnot, like adding non-land permanents. And this actually has a really, really solid win rate against aggro decks. But the problem is there's a handful of, people running around right now with mill decks and with drain decks. And for whatever reason, the mill deck and the drain decks just really just wreck Teferi. Like, it's just what it is. I play one Lotus Field because untapping with Teferi is just so nice sometimes when it happens. I used to play 2, but life, got to mix around and make sure all the stuff is good. Life, lands and such. One Coma because there's a lot of weird moments in this deck where you're just going turn to turn, using Deputy of Detention to just like take one-shot permanents from your opponent, spark doubling the deputies or spark doubling the Teferis. Some of the funniest moments I've had in this deck are moments where I have like literally 5-6 Teferis on board. And I actually have a couple gameplays of like me in win streaks where there's like one where I have literally like 5-6 Teferis on board. One where I did like I banished my opponent's entire board and then made 3 comas on the same turn. And then it was just gross. So there is a gameplay of that I'm going to share at some point, but this is the build. It's a lot of fun. Right now what I'm actually wanting to do is add more Teferi's Protections, because Teferi's Protections is just this really funny way of just taking an extra turn while also protecting Teferi. And no more golds right now, so life, we're just gonna have to wait for that. But it's a super fun deck. It's a lot of fun to just play Teferi and watch your opponent cry. Yeah. Life. And then Crisis Coma is one I've already shared. Might as well look over it anyway. It's a pretty basic concept, just like low to the ground ramp engine using Madomi's Prophecy and Emergence Sequence for that additional ramp. The reason I use Emergence Sequence is that it's a fairly low to the ground ramp card where with Emergence Sequence, Explore, and Growth Spiral, when you have 12 copies, you have almost a 100% chance of having at least 1 ramp card in your opening hand. And then you have a solid 40-ish 50 of having 2, Explore plus Growth Spiral or Growth plus Emergence. And it just really helps get out some of the bigger cards super early. 2 Cavaliers are in here because of White Flyers, and the count went up a little bit, 63 to 60. I'm actually not sure why. 25 lands. It must have just been some math thing. Oh, fell out of it. Life. This is one I shared a little bit ago, but did some upgrades, did some moving around, and this is the build that I settled on. Again, it's a difficult thing because this deck really is hoping to get a Coma or a big Crisis. Right about turn 5, turn 6, hit a River's Rebuke on turn 4 if you're lucky, turn 5 a little bit later to kind of slow down the game, do some good work against aggro. But a handful of the decks literally are winning on turn 3, turn 4. So sometimes it just doesn't do anything. But it is a lot of fun still to play. I think there's probably going to be some better ways to play the deck, but 7 converted mana costs as the main card of the deck, followed up by River's Rebuke the next turn, just isn't quite fast enough in the format right now. But it definitely is a fun deck. It got me really far in ranked and literally would win 10, 11 times in a row inside of the lower tiers like gold into platinum. But then the format started changing around, people are still building and all that jazz. And I figure, I don't know, maybe just show off one more thing for anybody that's still hanging out. The Garruk Draw Aggro. I think this is another deck that I think actually has a chance inside of the format, but I'm not sure if it's exactly where I want it to be. Again, I'm using, Abundant Harvest and using this little 12 pattern for the Emergence Sequence, Explore, Growth Spiral to borderline guarantee ramp in your opening hand. For the idea of having, your 4 CMC cards come out turn 3, your Gore Claws and Questing Beasts, just incredibly powerful to play those on turn 3, specifically Questing Beast, just still amazing. Questing Beast on turn 3 is just, I feel still good, and I'm really happy that it is, even though a lot of the decks are significantly fast. One of the reasons that is really good is because against a really fast aggro deck, they might have 2, 3, 4 creatures out, but if you Questing Beast on turn 3, swing in, they can't block anything, and then you can return on their turn, where they have to either remove it with multiple removal spells, or, you know, lose one of their creatures, it can kind of help swing the game in your direction. And Elder Gargaroth, Vivian's, Craigplate, Baloth, I just put that in there for the, you know, the Hexproof and Haste, a lot of sweet stuff. I do value it a little bit more than, I think his name is like Vorniclex or something like that. Vorniclex is, like, I think 1 mana less, but it has less power toughness. It also doesn't have haste and hexproof, which is just 2 awesome things. And also can be countered. So it's just one of those things where I do value Craigplate a little bit more. 2 comas, you know, again, a bunch of the cards just end the game. Basically the top end of this deck is just a bunch of game-ending cards, hopefully game-ending if you know, have the correct board presence and such. So Garruk Draw aggro. This is one, it was inspired by, MTG Jeff, I think, was the person I saw this deck from. Maybe he got it from someone else, but that's where I got this deck idea from. And that was the moment I realized that Garruk's Uprising was in the game. And I, you know, such a classic Simic green player. I was sitting there like this card is really good. In this format, I don't know. It's a difficult thing, but I think, you know, a solid turn 2 ramp into a turn 3/4 drop is just nice and good with the, you know, light draw engine. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and, you know, maybe you got some brewing ideas for me, and, you know, hope you guys have some fun. Later on, I'm going to be uploading for MTG some of the win streaks and stuff, the extra turn deck, and just some of the ridiculous 5 Teferis on board at once type of turns. So hope you guys have been enjoying your day. It's been your boy Kittens. Peace.